restricting you from building more complex chords. Advantages for guitarists. So mirrors how modes appear as fixed patterns on the fretboard. So if you're cutting up the fretboard, which is normal to do, you're going to use basically a 5 positions on the fretboard to cut the fretboard up and memorize the locations that you can name 1 through 5. You might be using a 3-note per string thing to basically be building out the scales on the fretboard, and so on and so forth. As you do that, you can see that the modes will fit into that, right? You can kind of name your positions by modal positions. Some ways that you break out the fretboard, you could name them, by basically the modal position instead of just a scale position. So you want to be able to see the fretboard from, the different perspectives, and modes is clearly going to be one of those perspectives, which the current chord naming convention doesn't help you to intuit out and should. Prevents mental gymnastics for converting everything back to a major scale equivalent. So we shouldn't be having to look at all the modes and convert the intervals and so on back to a major for comparison. We would like to learn the modes themselves, and also we shouldn't have to be basically renumbering all of our chord systems on a scale degree basis in order to build the chords. That's mental gymnastics that you don't need. You can remove it by not doing that, not renaming the numbering system on a scale degree basis. Allows thinking in terms of consistent node locations rather than temporary key centers. So learning all the notes on the guitar, that's a good goal to have. But is it the thing that's going to open up the fretboard the fastest and in the most utilitarian way? No, it's not, because you learn all the notes on the fretboard, but you don't know which notes are on the 7 destination continents. How do you know the 7 destination continents? You learn them by location names, by the Nashville number system, by the actual the nodes in the system. Those are the ones that are going to allow you to maneuver around. So it helps players understand the D Dorian and an E Phrygian are part of the same C major scale. So again, when you're looking at any set of notes, we usually name them based on the major key. So, but remember that those 7 notes, the major key is not any better than the other notes. That's just the way that's just the Rosetta Stone to name the 7 keys. I can use a center point of the 6 of it, meaning that would be a minor chord, right? A minor scale if we played it in order from that point. But I don't want to rename it. I don't want to renumber it from the 6. I want to recognize that it's the same collection of notes. I think the more old terminology was that we have a collection of notes, and then a scale is when you play those collection of notes in order. Currently, we typically think of a scale as basically we have the collection of notes and we're playing around the center point, right? Unless we're saying we're playing the actual scale, right? We're playing in a scale, that's the center point, and so on. But the old terminology is a little bit better. We're naming the collection of notes based on the major scale. It would be better to name the collection of notes, the 7 notes based on the major scale, and then say where the modal center is. So I'm going on the collection of notes for the C major. Those give me the 7 notes, but my center point, my home base, my tonic is the 6 or Aeolian. So you could say I'm playing in A minor that way, but that would indicate that you're going to renumber the system. I don't want to renumber the system. I want to say I'm playing in the collection of notes related to the major, because that's the way most people can visualize the shape the easiest. But the center point, the tonic, is the 6 or the Aeolian. Anyway, encourages viewing modal movements as shifts within a single grid rather than key modulations. So that's going to be a key component, because like I say, if you're playing in the Aeolian here, I don't want to rename the 6 to the 1, right? I want to see it in the same place. And if I go from the 6, to the 2, I want to see that as not going from a minor to a minor chord, a minor chord to a minor chord. I want to see it as going from the Aeolian to the Dorian, from the 6 to the 2. Those are both minor triads, but they're actually different shapes. Structural clarity with the modal whole steps. So chords are rooted as steps away from the modal root. So the normal scale degree system forces us once again, If I want to build a minor chord off of this 6, I have to make that the 1 and then pick every other note. So it would be the 1, 3, 5 based off of this as the 1. I don't want to do that. I want to keep that as the 6. Now this is where the measuring system, the analogy is, you have a kid that's standing 3 feet tall, the basketball hoop is 10 feet tall, you're trying to measure from the top of the kid to the basketball hoop, and you count the kid's head as foot number 1 and say that the top is the 8th foot away, right? No, the kid is 3 feet tall, and from the top of his head, it's 7 feet away. I don't need to rename the 6 to the 1 to measure the head of the kid, right? The head of the kid could still be the head of the kid. It's 6. And then I measure the distance. The distance could be measured in the 7-note series from that step, which would be, there's 2 modal whole steps up, meaning I skip every other note. So I skip every other note, doom, boom, to build the chord. So that means that would be the proper way to measure something rather than the scale degree system. You end up with something, the scale degree system is all off by 1 from my perspective. So you could say, how do you build a chord, a 3-note triad? They usually say it's the 1, 3, 5. But no, I'd rather say it's on the node you're on, and then we go up 2 modal whole steps, every other node, and then we go up another 2 modal whole steps, right? So the C would be skipping this one to here to here. You skip every other note on the 7 notes, right? If the C would skip every other note here to here. So the C major would better be named, by the way, by naming the nodes, Ionian, Phrygian, Mixolydian. And again, how cool is that? That would be so much better to name it. Now remember, if you're saying something is, let's say you're a minor, right? It's a minor and we're in A minor. Wouldn't it be a lot nicer to say, instead of saying the A minor has an A, skip every other note, to a C, to an E, to say that, no, let's just say that we're looking at the 3-note chord that's based off of the Aeolian or the minor. What would that include? It would include the notes, the nodes, the continents that we would be holding down of Aeolian or the 6, the Ionian or the 1, and then the Phrygian, right? And why is that better? Because it's universal. It's movable, right? That means that if I move the whole shape up so that I'm not playing in A minor, but I'm playing in B minor, then I'd have to learn all new notes if I look at it by note. But the continents will remain the same. You should be naming it by, look, it's still got the Aeolian, Ionian, and Phrygian. Why would you? That's the easiest way to name it, and it's totally maneuverable. Now again, one reason this might not happen is because it's not totally maneuverable on the piano. The piano's different because the black keys are not symmetrical. So it might be helpful on the piano to name the notes, because when you shift up through the 12 different keys, there's a different fingering because it's not a symmetrical instrument. I still think this system would be better for the piano even, but on the guitar, it's clearly better. It's totally symmetrical. You shouldn't be, like, why would I, once I've located where the collection of notes are, I don't want to name the notes that are in the chord by relative scale degrees. I want to name them by absolute numbering system, and I don't want to name the notes by the note name. I want to name them by the Nashville numbered system, which is equivalent to naming them by the modes, because it's movable. If it's not movable on the guitar, you can move on with that system. If your system ain't movable on the guitar, you can move on with that. I don't care how it works on the piano. It's not right. And I still think it's not the best way even on the piano, but more consistent than the traditional scale degree intervals. So avoids the redefinition of the 1 degree depending on the context. So again, I don't want to make the 6 the 1. I want to measure from the 6, right? And so, but I have to, because the 6, I have to measure the 1, 3, 5 from it. No, you don't have to measure the 1, 3, 5. You can keep it as the 6 and say that you're going a distance of 2 modal whole steps up from that, right? 2 modal half steps, and then 2 modal half steps, right? You're going up every other note from there. Boom, boom. That's the way to do it. And you can also convert to the scale degrees by saying the scale degrees are off by 1. So how would you measure it up? You measure it by saying you're going from the 0, the node you're on, up to two modal half steps, up another 2 modal half steps, which would be equivalent to, if you move that up 1, it's off by 1, the current system's off by 1, that would be equivalent to the 0 to 4 is equivalent to the 1, 4, 5, right? What, the 1, 3, 5. Anyway, I hope I got that right. So that's going to be the general idea. So summary, and so that's going to be the general idea. So summary. So the traditional system is a legacy-based and major scale centered. So again, I love the system. I love, the system works. It's logical. You can put it in the ChatGTP. It works. It's just not the cleanest. It's not the cleanest, and it's certainly not the cleanest system for the guitar, which is a symmetrical instrument. So it all makes logic sense. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It works. It's just it's like writing computer code and you wrote 5 pages of code when you could trim it down to half a page. That's basically what's happening here. It works, but you're memorizing 5 pages of code to do it, and you only need to memorize half a page if you wrote it a little bit more clean. And so I say, let's write it more clean and then convert it, translate it to the 5-page mode system so that we can then communicate with people that want you to jump through the hurdles. They want you to fill out the paperwork. Tell me everything about you. I don't care. Well, I'm just trying to play a song here. Well, tell us, who your spouse is and where you live, and give us this, your social. Look, I'm just trying to play a song here, right? That's what happened. I'm just trying to give my taxes. Okay, I know you're trying to give us your taxes, but tell us everything that's happened to you since your childhood, and then give us your money, right? No, do it the easy way and then jump through the hoops when you have to. That's what I say. Any case. So a mode-centered naming system offers better spatial awareness, less ambiguity, logical and modular expansion, compatibility with modern tools like Excel and fretboard diagrams. So again, the funny thing is that all of the MIDI and the softwares are having to do this. They're having to clean up this messy system so that the computer can work, which is just hilarious. Because I think it's funny because we're giving the computer how to do it the easy way, and we're still doing it the confusing way. The computer is there to make complex tasks easy, and what we're doing is we're dumbing down the task to the easy way so the computer can do it, so that we can reinterpret it in our mind the complicated way. That's backwards. No, we should do it the easy way and then expand on the complexity based on our music, not based on the language that we created from the music that's all messy, and then use the computer to trim down and do cool stuff. From that point, we can build a lot further if we had a cleaner system. So this approach doesn't just fix inconsistencies; it sets up a better foundation for improvisation, composition, and education. So again, I really think that if you jot your stuff down like this, you will better understand what you're doing, right? It'll give you a better context of the feel of the song that you're kind of trying to put together, because it's giving you more context from a musical based system, whereas the current chords don't tell you anything about the current song you're in. They're not telling you which chord, where you are on the fretboard. They're not telling you which mode that you're basically in. So anyway, that's my idea. That's what I think.